IVM.
There's a quick survey to fill out on ivmpodcast.com/survey. It lets us know a little bit more about who's listening to us. And you know what? We're going to do a few prizes. So, we'll do a random drawing of maybe 10 people and we'll send you all some swag. Remember, that's ivmpodcast.com/survey where you can fill out the survey.
Here's your smart fact of the day. So what is a thumbnail? Well, a thumbnail is something that has come into parlance quite recently, but it's become suddenly all powerful. So you hear a lot of these video creators or creators, as they're coolly called, use this term called thumbnail. So, hey, your thumbnail should be right. A thumbnail is nothing but a short, compressed preview image of what your video is going to be like. So it can differ in its resolution size. Size-wise, the Amazon thumbnail will be different from the YouTube thumbnail, from the Pinterest thumbnail, and the Google thumbnail. But essentially, a thumbnail is exactly that. In this episode of Smarter With Sid, what I'm going to try and do is figure out what a thumbnail actually does. Is there any other good way of doing a thumbnail? Why is a thumbnail becoming so important? And is there a takeaway from just looking at a thumbnail that we can maybe look at? Yeah, so let's go. Hey there, welcome to Smarter With Sid. And in Smarter With Sid, what we try to do is, for those who've come in late, of course, what we try to do is look at something that's trending, maybe look at something that's intriguing, interesting, at least to me. And I'm hoping that if it's interesting to me, maybe it'll be of interest to you. And try to understand what it is about, maybe understand the context of it a little, then try and go down to the first principle of it, or maybe first principles of it at times, and figure it out, break it down. And after we do that, then figure out if there's any takeaway for us, people who are working, people who have lives, careers, and aspirations and hopes. Is there something that we can take away from that specific content or specific thing that we are discussing? Now, today, what I'm going to talk about is a thumbnail. And trust me, I used to think it's much ado about something really small. But boy, am I mistaken. If I look at what a thumbnail can achieve, I have to trace my way back to a video that I saw quite recently, to be honest. It's a Colin and Samir video. And I don't know if you've seen these guys. For people who are interested in being a creator in the new economy, whether it is, being on Instagram or being on YouTube, that YouTube channel is the shit, I'm telling you. But they're talking about what a thumbnail is, what it achieves, and they've kind of given a few rules about that thumbnail, which I found quite interesting. So for instance, they say, okay, so your thumbnail, and by the way, a lot of that video was sponsored, so they were kind of trying to sell some editing tool as well, so I'm not going to get into that. But essentially, they do look at a thumbnail, by the way, which is this really small compressed image that you see on maybe your phone when you click on your YouTube app on your phone, and then you say, okay, this looks interesting, let me go for that. So what they're saying is, okay, maybe if you're centered, okay, in the middle of the frame, and if it's like really coming across well as in the image, as in the background, etc., and it's communicating what you're trying to communicate and making it interesting enough for people to stop scrolling, then you're onto something quite interesting. So I looked at that, and while what they're saying is absolutely right, and it's the basic, in fact, they learned it from Mr. Beast, who's this really famous YouTuber. I've done a sort of episode on the 3 lessons I've learned from Mr. Beast, and you can take a look at that. But coming back to this, a thumbnail is specifically quite interesting for them because they learned it from Mr. Beast, because they were not very good. So they were creating these fantastic videos, but they were not getting any views and stuff like that. And Mr. Beast told them, dudes, just improve your thumbnails. And that was like this master guru giving a master tip, obviously, because Mr. Beast has got millions and millions and millions of views. Now, for a moment, I'm not saying that if you just get the right thumbnail, you're going to suddenly get the right view. But there is something to that. And thumbnail design, if there is such a term, I think is going to be of utmost importance. Now, just let's picture the difficulty over here. What you're trying to do is compress a story, whatever you're trying to do, whatever you're trying to communicate. Why should people watch into something which is like the size of your thumbnail, which is, or even lesser? on your phone. Now, that's quite an art. And it means that less is more in that. It means that whatever your most attractive thing is has to be out there. It has to be aesthetically pleasing. It also has to communicate a very intriguing story, right? So many lessons we just learn because of the smallness of whatever it is. So, we are continuously blindly scrolling, and then we come across something we don't even know why it's interesting, that cat video maybe, or something that Gary Vee has said, or something of that sort. And actually, if you take a deeper look at why you like what you like, it's still difficult to explain. And at that point in time, you understand that your subconscious mind is working way more than what you actually give it credit for. Yeah, so that is, probably if I break it down into first principle from the context, the first principle is a thumbnail should connect not just with your conscious mind, but also your subconscious mind, because when we are scrolling, it's a habit, right? So in order for that habit to be broken and you to stop on a specific thumbnail, it has to appeal not just to your thinking logical self, but also somewhere else, right? The second thing, the second first principle, or whatever you want to call it, is also that your thumbnail has to understand the attention economy. So your brain is already compromised. There's so much of information that we are feeding ourselves with. So we've got this information glut. In fact, a lot of people are comparing the amount of information diet that we have. Like, it's a toxic diet. It's like us being on McDonald's and KFC all the time. And a lot of people are trying to wean themselves away. So a thumbnail has to break through that. It's like that little piece of broccoli that says, hey, come on, you should try eating this stuff as well, instead of all the burgers that you're eating. How are you going to do that? How are you going to do that? Well, your thumbnail has to communicate that level of story. Now, if I have to create a thumbnail for myself, and I must say I've been very guilty of not making enough videos and then not making thumbnails out of those videos, because it is, to be honest, a lot of work to design something like that, because you got to use an editing tool, you got to filter it, you got to make things attractive as shit, and much more than that. But if I have to do it, the first question that I'll ask myself is, what is the best possible way in which this particular story that I'm giving, in whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, that can be told? What is the most attractive feature of the story? What is the most intriguing feature of the story should be communicated? And it is different things for different people. Hey, if you're an attractive influencer, you know what to do. If you're somebody who's got a really strong statement, you know what to do. So identifying what is really working in that video, identifying what is really working for you as a person, and then making a thumbnail out of it is probably the way to go. So when you're making a thumbnail, when designing a thumbnail, don't design the thumbnail. Design your story, your thought first, maybe. That's the first principle. And I don't know. I mean, a lot of us are not going to ever do any thumbnails, right? I mean, because we are not creators. Maybe I am, but maybe you're not. Maybe you have an accountant's job. Maybe you have a normal marketing person's job. You are not going to create a thumbnail. But one second, the principles that we've learned are not just related to thumbnails. Can you express yourself, for instance, whenever you're in a room and whenever you're introducing yourself to somebody really attractive, or somebody who can help you with your career, or whatever it is, in the best, most compelling way possible? You can think in terms of PowerPoint, you can think in terms of Word, you can think in terms of a story, you can think in terms of a pitch, and all of them are good, but just try and think in terms of, this compressed little video that you've got. And that will give you an inkling of how tough your job is to stand out in a world that is already shouting. And some great thumbnails are things that I think, if you can just take a look at, there's so much to learn from there on the way in which we communicate, the way in which we communicate about ourselves and our work to the rest of the universe. Yeah. So, well, I really hope you like this, this kind of stuff that I'm doing. And I hope that you like this specific episode. And if you like this specific episode, you know what to do. Well, don't look at my thumbnails because they're terrible. But make sure that you like and subscribe this podcast and this episode. And, Follow me on Instagram. I'm the Traveling Professor. And connect with me on LinkedIn. I do some weird, interesting stuff over there as well. And hey, if you like podcasts like these, go to ivmpodcast.com. They've got some good stuff going there, mate. Really good stuff. And I just think that whatever you do, make sure that think of life as your thumbnail, and you will always make it better, I guess. You'll always make it pithier, if nothing else. On that happy note, until next time, see you soon.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Think Fast, Varun and Suchita do a rundown of the Zilingo drama and discuss Amazon Prime's show slate. On The Wired Talk, Siddharth and Professor Ashutosh Varshni comment on the rise of communal violence in India. On Big Talk About Tiny Humans, Devi Shobha and Meghna share a 5-step action plan to move away from the habit of yelling at your kids. On All Things Policy, the Takshashila folk discuss how NFTs could revolutionize policies. And on Hansvani, a cook teaches the art of living to neglected children in the story Bacche or Bawarchi. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're following this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Word of mouth is one of our biggest, most helpful things you could do for us. We'd really appreciate that. And also, don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening on. And you can also check us out on YouTube. Go check out ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. You get a list of all of our YouTube channels there. We're also doing a small listener survey to better understand how you respond to our shows and the advertising on the network. We would really appreciate it if you could spare a few minutes to fill it out. It's at ivmpodcast.com/survey. This really helps us build better shows for you. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors for this week, SBI Life Insurance, India Water Portal, and Jupiter, a digital banking app.
You're the people pleaser, right?
Oh, yes.
Or then desperately seeking the one? Oh wait, you're the one who doesn't think they're ever good enough.
Oh.
So much drama. And for what? Is it doing you any good? Listen to me. I'm Chetna, your favorite positive action coach. Yes, I'm the one who has been dropping all those truth bombs on every episode.
Oh, no.
And it's time you learn to say no to drama. That's also what my podcast is called. And a new episode is out every Monday and Wednesday on the IVM Podcast app, website, as well as all major podcasting platforms.